After the First World War, the American economy hit the gas, pivoting from wartime production to a massive, roaring consumer boom. Thanks to Henry Ford's moving assembly line, what used to take 12 hours to build now took 90 minutes. Thousands of new cars poured onto the streets. Millions of households rushed to get their hands on new gadgets like the radio. But they weren't paying up front. Urban America had discovered a dangerous new financial mechanism, the installment plan. Buy now, pay later. This era engineered a culture where people bought what they couldn't afford, masking a massive, fragile foundation of debt beneath the appearance of endless wealth. That same credit addiction soon found its way to Wall Street. Everyday citizens, from butchers to barbers, started treating the stock market like a casino, throwing borrowed cash at speculative investments. This chart shows how a margin loan worked. You could buy $100 of stock with $10 of cash. The remaining 90 was invisible debt. As millions bought on margin, prices quadrupled, floating entirely on hype. Then came Black Tuesday. In a single day, the public woke up, the optimism evaporated, and the market collapsed. Billions of dollars in phantom wealth vanished overnight, leaving thousands in stunned silence outside the stock exchange. The crash was a catastrophic mechanical failure. An entire economy built on blind trust and leveraged debt had finally tripped over its own shoelaces. The collapse started a brutal chain reaction. Brokers panicked and issued margin calls, demanding their clients immediately repay that 90% they had borrowed. Investors who had been paper millionaires on Monday were entirely bankrupt by Thursday. Those individual bankruptcies fed directly into the banking system. Local branches suddenly realized their vaults were full of IOUs from people who had lost everything. Terrified depositors rushed to withdraw their physical cash. Crowds surged against locked doors, screaming for their life savings. But the money was already gone, forcing otherwise healthy institutions to fold permanently. The disaster didn't stop at the American border. Panicking U.S. banks began calling in their overseas loans. This sudden demand for cash choked international trade, throwing fragile European economies right into the blender. The banking collapse proved that the entire global financial system relied on a single, incredibly fragile wire of confidence. When New York snapped, the mechanical gear locking of global commerce followed. Behind the financial data was visceral human suffering. By 1932, unemployment soared to 25%. Factories shuttered entirely, leaving thousands of men to wait in massive, quiet breadlines for a bowl of thin soup. As cities sagged under the weight of hunger, the agricultural heartland faced an environmental apocalypse. Years of aggressive farming had stripped the topsoil bare. When massive winds arrived, biblical black blizzards buried entire towns in dirt, destroying the nation's food supply. President Herbert Hoover responded with rigid ideology. He encouraged volunteerism, but refused to authorize large-scale federal relief, insisting that government intervention would destroy the American spirit of rugged individualism. That ideology culminated in the summer of 1932. Thousands of destitute World War I veterans set up camp in Washington, peacefully begging for their promised service bonuses. The government's response was to send in the military to tear gas their own heroes. With banks shuttered and veterans under fire, the existing societal protections had failed. The federal government had shifted from a protector to a threat, leaving the survival of millions in question. In March 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt took office. His first move was psychological. He told a desperate public that the only thing they had to fear was fear itself, attempting to break the cycle of panic with sheer confidence. Roosevelt followed those words with rapid action, launching sweeping federal public works programs. These were deliberate efforts to put shovels in hands, paying millions of Americans to plant trees and lay roads, rebuilding human dignity along with the infrastructure. The physical scale of this intervention was massive. Projects like the Tennessee Valley Authority erected enormous dams, bringing state-funded electricity to impoverished regions that had previously lived in the dark. These programs established the government as a direct economic architect. For the first time, federal agencies assumed responsibility for the basic survival of the national workforce. Roosevelt also needed to fix the underlying machinery. He established permanent regulatory guardrails, creating the SEC to police Wall Street's recklessness and the FDIC to ensure bank deposits, ensuring a market crash would never again erase a family's savings. Then came Social Security. By creating a permanent financial safety net for the elderly and vulnerable, the government guaranteed that a lifetime of work wouldn't end in destitution. With these foundational protections in place, people could safely participate in society again. Slowly, the lights flicked back on. Cities buzzed, restaurants reopened, and Americans flocked to movie theaters to imagine a future. The Great Depression left deep, permanent scars on the country, yet the sheer endurance of the public forced a necessary evolution of the American system. The 1930s forged the modern American state, embedding a hard-learned lesson into law. When unchecked speculation brings a nation to its knees, a government's primary duty is to catch its people when the system fails.